Hey there, welcome back. Today we'll try rendering with a lasso tool. If you don't know what a lasso tool is, it's a free selection tool with a logo shaped like a lasso, hence the name. Almost every drawing apps have this, by the way. Today's video is inspired by Eudora on Xiaohongshu. Some of you might have heard of Eudora from one of my shorts. They have a watercolor style that emphasizes on the planes of the face, which can be achieved with a lasso tool. Planes are very important to prevent the face from looking flat. I'm not a fan of flat looking faces, like what are you, Slenderman? So let's try out this method. But before that, let's sketch our subject first. I'm drawing Kaya because why not? Why not draw Kaya? He's beautiful, he's smart, it was his birthday recently. So why not? For this method, you would need a clean sketch, or even a line art would be much better. Make it as thin as you can, so it doesn't distract you during the coloring. I've tried this lasso thing with Cafe before, but I didn't make a clean sketch for it and jump straight into the coloring. And let me tell you, the first 60 minutes was hell. There were tears and hand cramps and many attempts of giving up, so don't be like me and draw your clean sketch. By the way, I'm using flat watercolor opaque for sketching, but I'm gonna use a different brush for the coloring. I will focus on the coloring in this video, so I will not dive into the anatomy and how to draw the facial features, but if you wanna learn about that, I made a comprehensive videos for my members. Yes, this is a shameless membership plug. You've been plugged up! Wait, I've made eyes and nose tutorials, and next I will do mouth and the whole face. You can join the membership for only 99 cents. Yes, 10,000 rupiah is only 99 cents in US dollar because my country's economic condition is effed in the butt. Or for $2.99, you can also vote for characters and topic I'm drawing. You can also request one in the future. But again, no pressure to join though. Anyway, we have the base color, now let's get to shading. I'm using transparent watercolor opaque. It has a watercolor texture when applied, and I'll be using this one brush during the shading and rendering. First, I will apply the blush across Kaya's cheeks and nose with muted red on a multiply layer. I will also add some color on his lips. Eudora applied watercolor texture to the base color, so we'll do that with another multiply layer and apply light gray with the transparent watercolor opaque brush all over the base color. Yes, you can also look for watercolor texture on Google and overlay it on top of the drawing, but you can also do this instead of that, so do whatever you want, I guess. I made another multiply layer and fill the whole painting with shadow. Select the face and erase some areas for the lighting. This is what Eudora did in their video, I'm just following it. Mine looks much weirder though, but it can be because I'm not used to this method yet. Or maybe I just suck, I don't know. When I did Cafe recently, hold on, weird phrasing. When I painted Cafe recently, yeah, sounds much better, I didn't do the erasing the shadow method because I was following Eudora's other video. But I wanna try this for Kaya because I've seen some artists using this method and it looks good. So fingers crossed. Okay, now I will apply darker and more saturated shadows to emphasize the facial features and planes according to the reference, using the lasso tool. Leave some parts empty like this, so don't fill the whole selection with color. To understand the planes of the face, you can study the Asaro head or the Arcane's characters because the face rendering isn't overly smooth, so you can see the visible planes. Eudora used a lot of rounded shapes, so I will apply that in my shading as well, especially for the clothes. The hair shading looks fairly simple. Just shade the overlapping parts and add more shadows at the top. This is quite easy. I think I can get used to this type of shading. Okay, I don't think I can finish this drawing without rendering or painting over the sketch. I actually envy people who can draw without painting over the sketch because the sketch has to be perfect for this, right? Well, maybe not perfect, but anatomically good enough that you don't have to adjust the proportion. Oh, and I think you also need a good layer management, which is non-existent for me. As always, I'm rendering the nose first. It's just out of habit, no other reason. Now the brush is starting to lose texture though. I don't know what happened. I'm still using the transparent watercolor opaque, but it lost the watercolor texture as I'm painting over the sketch. This also happened when I painted Cafe. which makes the painting looks really weird because the textures didn't distribute evenly. Instead of a soft watercolor texture like Eudora's, my painting looks thick, like an acrylic painting. Anyway, I will use the lasso tool to make triangles below the eyes. If you look at the reference, okay, it's kinda not clear because of the glasses, but the blush formed a triangle because there's a sharp highlight here. Lasso tool is great to make sharp edges, which are important in semi-realistic paintings. I think I blended mine too much though. It looks too soft now that I'm looking at it, but my past self didn't seem to notice this because I jumped straight into drawing the eyes before fixing the face shading. Great going, Fang. I'm sure it won't bite you in the buttocks later. Anyway, yeah, I simplified the eye into angular shapes and used red for the lower waterline. I rarely draw the lower lash line these days. I mean, I sketched it, but rarely leave it in the final result. Rarely is... Who invented the word rarely? There's so much R in one short word. Rarely. Jesus. Okay. I usually make the corners of the eye darker and leave the middle lighter. Now just duplicate and flip it for the other eye. Because who has the time to draw it, right? Make sure the inner corners are in one line though. When you flip the canvas and the eyes look weird, it's most likely because the inner corners are not in one line. Now let's add the eyebrows, make it dark and rectangular. Just my preference though, you can shape it however you want. My drawings usually look better after adding the eyebrows. And it seems that I was right. Before moving on to the hair, I will add darker shadows beneath it using the lasso tool and refrain from blending it. And this is how I was supposed to paint, with very minimal blending to keep the planes intact. I am adding a new layer to add his fringe and other missing hair strands back. I will add the highlights in the middle, so I'm focusing the shadows to the top. I made a teardrop shape with the lasso tool and shade. Now add the highlights and turn them into a Hyundai logo shape. I usually use darker color on each end of the highlights. The hair rendering is actually so much easier using this method because the lasso tool keeps the hard shadows intact. And also because we made a nice and tidy sketch beforehand. So we don't need to change a lot of things when rendering. The same thing cannot be said for my cafe painting though. I seriously have no idea where the hair is going. In the end, I resized the painting so it's 90% face in the canvas, so there's less hair to render, which turns out to be a surprising life hack. Like, you don't want to render that much hair, just magnify the face so it fills the whole canvas. The face has to be decent enough though. Just saying. Anyway, I made a selection to the whole hair and added a soft glow on the bottom area using color dodge layer. This will add a translucent effect and add stylization to the painting. I'm changing one of Kaya's eye to yellow. There's been speculations and artist renditions of Kaya's other eye being yellow or gold, so I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. I think the whole color's too muted though, so I'm adding saturated colors with an overlay layer. Overlay makes every color brighter and more saturated. The result is depending on the colors below it. If your painting has a yellow undertone, use muted magenta or purple on the overlay to balance out the colors. Since my painting is more gray, I can use slightly saturated brown to overlay it. I'm adding the colors manually with an airbrush. However, you can also just increase the saturation using hue and saturation. It's much quicker. I just like to have more control over the colors, so I'm doing it manually. No, I'm not a control freak, shut up. With another overlay layer, I'm adding more colors to the blush, tip of the nose, and lips. I've heard somewhere that adding red around the eyes will make you look adorable and lovable. But Kaya looks high in here. Does he look high to you? Okay, let's not dwell on whether Kaya looks high or not, and let's add the rainbow face. Yes, this is a method I've been using for a while now to prevent the skin tone from looking flat. Eudora showed this guideline at the very beginning of their video, so I will use that for my painting. I also did this for Cafe as well, and it adds color variation and depth to his skin. Love it. Because Kaya has darker skin tone, I find that lowering the rainbow saturation just a little bit makes it more natural. I am doing this in multiply layer and then lower the opacity. I usually use 15 to 20%. I still think the color's too muted though, so I play it around with Ibispaint's filter to increase the saturation. And thanks to my anchovy brain, I lost the rainbow. And the color's too saturated now. Great going, Fang. But you know, maybe this is like what Bob Ross always says. Maybe this is just a happy accident. I am, however, not a very positive person. So, remind me to fix the colors later. Thank you. I'm adding tiny highlights on the eyes, nose, and mouth. Less is more for highlights, at least for this type of art style. In the past, I used the add layer for highlights because it has a glow effect, but ever since I learned a more realistic style, using normal layer is more natural. So I found this brush called Watercolor Edge 2, and I actually considered using it for the rendering, but it's kinda hard to control, so I'm using it to add more watercolor texture. Blend only one side of it to keep the watercolor outline intact. The result is quite good. It looks more watercolor now. I think I will use this brush for my other paintings. Then of course I'm adding thin shades of blue to the shadows to reduce the harshness. I also added on the highlights for stylization. Still, I think I blended the shading too much though. Eudora's work have a lot of sharp edges that emphasize the planes of the face nicely. By the way, this is my end result with Cafe, and as you can see, the planes are not very visible, and the texture looks more like dry paint rather than watercolor. Alright, I forgot to add the rainbow back in. I'm doing this in Multiply, but linear burn works as well. It's more saturated than Multiply though, so pick the one that suits your style best. I will also re-emphasize the lost sharp edges with the lasso tool. Even if we don't use the lasso tool throughout the whole rendering, it's still a very useful tool to add realism. I will practice more on this and hopefully I can make a tutorial video on how to use it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Become a member if you want, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!